Good morning, welcome. We are live here on during the day, but we are back. We are here. Thank you so much for being here. Now, a lot has been coming in. My name think about a couple of, and you can get to have this in your community scattered in around Kampala. It was quite a surprise because you did have a couple of dry patches in certain places, and of course have a couple of, and within our own city central area. Doors of inspiration as usual, that happens from 8 o'clock, but we will ride and recap on what we about yesterday, purpose, and as well recap on something that passion. We will turn passion versus through. What do you feel should be able to ride you through your business journey? Is it the passion? Is it the love for money? We did have this discussion, and of course we did have a couple of comments coming in from different persons saying that of course it is the love for money that will keep you up at night rather than the passion. And of course you did have the other side as well say, no, it is the passion for them. What works for you as well? Of course here on Smart Means Business here, live at Smart 24 TV, we did say the passion is very key. Passion will weather you through a couple of challenges as they come along. And we do know that, and even though the love for the money may be there, it is very easy as well to get very discouraged and disappointed and quit when the subsequent loss after subsequent loss. And it's very difficult. Very many will throw in their towels and say, you know what, I'm done with this business. But passion, it will not let you go. It will keep waking you up at night. You may quit on it a little bit. You may quit on the business and lay it low a couple of days. Of course, we cannot spend a day without giving you the latest, not only on the national, but as well as regional and international news. We will have our team down TV, but in between, as we do wait for that, remember Monday to Friday from right about this time, 9 to 10, we do have, of course, Business Insight, when we get to talk about those insightful moments on pertinent topics happening not only in Uganda, but elsewhere around the world. Let's get to talk about a couple of things that have been coming in. A lot of chaos, a lot of mire has been going on around Canada, and we have been talking about this on Smart 24 TV during our programs here. A lot of tariffs, a lot of competition, a lot of protectionism, pulling and tag pulling has been happening, especially between US, the Canada, EU, and over China. And of course, looking at this, we will talk about the electric vehicles. For those of you who are wondering what is happening, Kira, our Kira is right there in Uganda, and quite optimistic. A couple of orders were coming in. Chira Motors, which was the very first electric vehicle project, was rolled out in 2011, and Africa's first hybrid vehicle, the Chira EVS, in 2014, and Africa's first solar electric bus, the Kayola Solar Bus, in 2016. A total of 39 buses have been manufactured in Uganda, of which 27 are electric. And apart from the potential, we do have, of course, on one side of the coin, EU, Canada, as well as the US, really being very, very protective over their turf and saying to China that you will not flood to get a break from this and really make some money when it comes to pushing for different turf and different markets for its particular products. But Uganda has reinstated, they were allowed to reinstate the import duty on fully built electric bikes, hybrid vehicles, and electric vehicles during the review of the East African Community Common External 2022. Traffic sector protection calls for electric cars which produce zero electric buses from Tanzania, South Africa, Nigeria, and Eswatini. Optimism and coming out. Now, we normally come out on a very, that is for Uganda, we normally come out on a very powerful, punch, with a powerful punch. But then how long can this be sustained? How long can this be sustained? well. Why is it? Because when we flip the coin, in news coming in from Kenya, electric vehicles uptake goes up 5-fold. And the number of electric vehicles and motorcycles registered in Kenya increased more than 5 times last year as more corporations and individuals migrated to clean mobility. Data from the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, shows that the National Transport and record 2,694 electric vehicles, EVs, in 2023, marking a significant increase from the 470 in the country by the end of 2023 stood at 3,753. The initiatives such as the introduction of the e-mobility tariff, reduction of excise duty on EVs from 20% to 10%, and exemption elsewhere. The desire to widen the tax base. We do have, of course, we have reported here on Smart 24 TV about the different difficulties. What the total value of refinanced government security 23-24 in a development that promises higher borrowing costs, refinancing government debt of expiring securities. The latest data, 23-24 period, the balance of $160 million financed in June 2024, according to the data in July. We need to talk about, especially when the ministry is trying to put forward, and the inflation levels were not as drastic as what was happening in countries. We did report here o'clock to 9 o'clock, 7 to 9, about with lots and lots of basic goods going up almost a couple of months just back. So knowing that Uganda did actually do well, it did get some accolades, a little bit of applause coming in, that it had managed the situation, and the situation had sort of like dropped when it came back, because earlier on at the beginning of the year we did have, and we did quote quite a number of different basic products, basic consumption goods such as soap and sugar. Sugar had gone up really in some places to even 5,500, but right now it is around other consumables, basic consumables. A lot is still happening, and like I mentioned, the ministry has really been given some applause for trying to. Today we do have our business insight down on ground. We should be having a live coming in, the latest on that. Now, of course, like the street, you will notice that right in front of Amber House, you do have vehicles, and you do have quite a lot of conversation that has been going on in regards to that, with many saying, when is this being rolled out? Now, for some of us who have used these cars, because the different motorcycles, the motorcycles are quite different. We did have a discussion on this, and not even just looking at the satisfaction, the client satisfaction of noise. Noise pollution has really been cut down. Very silent, very beautiful power that those motorcycles, electric motorcycles, when it comes to that, it's as if when you are so used to the noise coming out, and then you get that soft power from the new, it was quite a wonderful experience. But now you get acclimatized, you get very used to a noiseless environment sitting on a bike right now. And definitely we are now and then trying to scrutinize the practicality, the effectiveness. Indeed, 5 out of 10, much more than that actually, around the survey actually puts it at around 8 out of 10 have been quite optimistic, have said that definitely the costs that were being incurred have much or more lessened down significantly, and they're not having as much trouble as they thought they would when it comes to powering up their batteries, their little batteries. So cycle, when you do buy that electric vehicle, what will happen to the charging port being carrying out here on different border users, especially of difficulty? They're still quite optimistic. In fact, the ones that I spoke to were saying they're really calling upon all the others, all their colleagues, to join, more or less quicken the stride and get onto this EV bandwagon. Right now, we are giving you the latest happening within the region, with Kenya almost tripling the number from 2023 to right about now in this year. coming in. Remember, Kenya's electric vehicle comes in at the record. It registered a record 2,694 electric vehicles in 2023, marking a significant increase from the 475 stood at 3,700. Other incentives are being put out there, and of course the government initiatives introduced and did quite well with that story. The EV, the Kira Motors developed its first Kira electric vehicle project in 2011 and Africa's first hybrid vehicle. And then, of course, a total of 39 buses have been manufactured diesel combustion. The Kira vehicle plant located in the industrial and business park in October 2024. Currently, the biggest budget of at least 2,500 buses yearly. In the second phase, a production, body shop, chassis line, and paint shop, quality inspection and testing, and building and test track will be constructed. So a lot of that, according to a report by the International Energy Agency, more than half of the electric vehicles on roads worldwide are found in China. The country was also in electric small cars by increasing import duty from nil in the previous financial year to 25%. Now, with over, of course, this has pushed up the cost of the Nissan million Uganda shillings to 255. Their electric cars are already expensive, and he projects that once this rollout of around 2,500 vehicles yearly, as anticipated, rated URA car import data shows that the electric car imports reached 420 units in 2023-2024. Hybrids and electric create awareness, create infrastructure, because there are not so many people. Some sort of thing, just these, because clearly what China, the different, stay with us here, the newspapers, the New Vision, as well as the Daily Monitor, and we can, the press review should be coming up right now. As they return to, of course, you do have Kenya killed situations right now. Where for the Doors news coming that came in a couple of days back in the deadliest Kenyan school arson that took. That was, of course, a recap, of course, that came in a couple of years back, decades back, actually, to education in Kenya, while the deputy president said 70 children were unaccounted for, so the death toll could not be verified. It was thought that some of these children there to escape the fire or were picked up by their parents without the school with injuries. And the President, William Ruto, called the fire horrific and devastating and has ordered an investigation. A lot of borders. And in 2022, a dormitory in Western Kenya was burnt down with several students later arrested on suspicion of arson. And then, of course, in 2017, high school. And you do have, of course, all this happening. Now, this fire, and whereas we're looking at traffic, just as has been highlighted, what I'm more concerned about is this has brought on, of course, that remembrance of what caution. And we had been here mentioning at Smart 24 TV, saying, let us see how long this will business down again back to traffic. It seems to be the norm around here. We did have, of course, after those fires, then you did have quite a number of officials come in and begin to carry out precaution, safety measures that are put in place. We did have quite a lot of schools being closed in regards to the safety measures. But this, in one way or another, has sort of like gone back towards safety guidelines as schools reopen. Please, a couple of fires as well, with 17 dead being reported. Against corruption, saying despite his achievement, he has noticed some weaknesses. He's still calling for REIT coming in. The president cited theft of army fuel and wondered why the army rations, pension money, allowances, and salary corruption incidents in the selection of personnel who go for external missions, such as the but what happens after that? That is where the problem is, where we should be aggressive, quite a lot of aggression when it those particular systems to ensure that there is periodic persons that begin to indulge in corruption. Instead of waiting for it to get out of hand, the Kampala Road project there has been quite a highlight. You do remember that we have had quite a number of snippets being in regards to the bad roads in Kampala. And let's not even talk about Uganda. Let's keep it just down to Kampala. What is it? We should have some of those officials from National Water come and tell us really what is happening. Is it more or less an overpopulation sort of thing versus out and have an official come here and join us happening with the rubbish piles due to Chitezi, the smelly sources coming in. And of course, you do have the rubbish piles heaping up, and then you do have the broken down sewage systems all over the place. It is not the best. It's not the if they don't have all the different resources to do something about it, can they please rally? Can they advocate? Because clearly you just can't get out of wherever you are if it is your apartment running around the roads all the time. But back into what we were talking about, government launches 2 trillion Greater Kampala Road project. So it's not the best situation. We should have a moment to talk about this. The government yesterday launched the 2.2 trillion Greater Kampala, and the roads to be tarmac, those that have been put aside, Kampala Capital City Authority, you do have Ben Kiwanuka roads, you do have Rashid Kamis, Old Camp, you do have Nasana Municipality, and Mukono, you do have Ntenjeru Bule. So that is what will be happening. We don't want to see this fracas as is happening every day. But we have had instances really around the old Chira Road, these things on Sapolo Kagwa Road, cyclical poster of miss. Because we did mention at one time and said, but what is wrong? What is this? That even when you do have the budgets, yes, no matter how trained they are, can you do something that is long lasting? We will have our spotlight, of course, on that. Now you do realize, of course, some sad news came in earlier on a couple of days. The late MP founded a technical institutions that grew into a Metropolitan International University. And she has been praised really for inspiring many young people in Kisoro and the entire country to pursue education, politics, business, and other fields. It was quite a loss. We're still reeling from that bad news. And may her soul continue, may it rest in peace, really, as by the authority to dismiss him. Makerere starts sickle cell disease treatment and research center. Activists propose 10% tax increase on tobacco. The Uganda Tobacco Taxation Coalition has proposed a 10% increase on tobacco produced locally and that which is imported. And this is, of course, a coalition of civil society organizations with a common goal of fighting the ever-increasing burden of non-communicable diseases caused by tobacco smoking and by advocating for strict taxation. If they are to widen the tax base, is an area that they can focus on. Proposed 10% tax increase on tobacco, and maybe some persons will be deterred from getting into that. But let's take a short break, and we will be right back immediately else. A short break coming up now.
Now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks. Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000, or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100 *21# and select daily, or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
Cooking oil like no other makes your meal so sweet and scrumptious. The taste of Uganda, yeah, the taste of Uganda, the taste of
Smart 24, driving business.
Welcome back from the break. Like we mentioned earlier, we do have our team, a Smart 24 TV team down on ground capturing some important news right now. Let us dive straight into the live and have a look at what is happening out there. Straight into live right now.
Craft our advocacy, that we would craft our alternative investment framework would be very critical. Lastly, when we talk about positive results from investments, it's not automatic. It's not on a silver plate that an investor comes in and says, blah, blah, will provide jobs and all that. No. We need to be deliberate, We need to be deliberate. We need to have very strong policy frameworks. Yeah? We need to have carrots and sticks in our framework to ensure that all stakeholders, and by the way, we are not putting the limelight on the investors alone. That's why we are talking about balancing rights and obligations. The forces state who are here. Don't say, civil society, they don't want investors. No, we want investors because both local and foreign. We want investors because we need development, but we need to balance the rights and obligations. And we are putting obligations on all the actors, the communities. How should the communities behave? But how should the investors behave?
The stage for the discussions today. We noticed that she has tackled the presentation and a discussion around towards a new generation of investment policies, laws and agreements. She touches very many things that we are all grappling with in our different spaces that we are operating in. She's talking about issues of need to harness more resources towards achieving development goals, issues of creating decent jobs, industrialize, create production and productivity, increase production and productivity, issues of the environment, inclusive growth. She talks about investment that is directed towards our aspirations and our challenges. She talks about the core principles that we are dealing with, where the investment policy should be grounded in our national development plan and need to allocate roles to all actors. Then she gets to the place that we are all struggling with, the space of the other actors, apart from government, other than government, but also the space of private investment in Uganda. And we well know that private investment is taking center stage because of now the bigger hand of private investment in the provision of public services. So that's also a trend that has been adopted by financiers, but also by governments, to be able to reduce the burden that comes to the government when it comes to providing public services. The regional approach and the partnerships between countries is something that has also come up. Incidentally, I'm not certain whether she'll be coming back or she has left, because we hope to have a plenary where we'll be having some questions go towards her. But well, we can still have the discussions because we are all experts in different ways here, and we can all indulge in that discussion around the presentation that she has made. We are going to use this as an opportunity before we take the tea break. We are going to use the opportunity to listen in to the nexus between investment, climate change, business, and human rights. I recognize the presence of Ms. Joy Akoli. She hadn't come in, so now that she's here, the room is full. Okay, please clap for her. Yes, she's a very big person. So we're going to have the opportunity to have the discussion around the nexus between investment, climate change, business, and human rights. Let's invite Joseph to come and make his remarks. And we are also going to invite Joy, because it's Joy and Joseph, to be talking about these issues. Joy looks very surprised. Yes, your compliment in regard to the discussion as it goes. So, please, Joseph, you're welcome. This one sits. Because we have a lion here. So can we use this one seat so that we can make...
Thank you so much, John. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Joseph Haji. I coordinate the Uganda Consortium on Corporate Accountability, and Siatini is one of our members. My role today is to share with us the nexus between investment, climate change, and business and human rights from the lens of Uganda's Investment Code Act. It's very absurd that Madam Jane has left. I wanted to answer her question. When she was opening her presentation, she asked us, we see the Investment Code Act, what does it mean? And I remembered the discussion we had back then at law school when we were being introduced to the Penal Code Act. A code is a collection of laws. And so once that collection of laws is made into an act of parliament, it becomes an act. So it's an Investment Code Act. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we satisfied with Uganda's collection of investment laws? I think by the end of this discussion, we'll be able to answer the question, whether in the affirmative or not. Are we satisfied? Is there an opportunity to cause change? So this conversation needs to drive us towards that aspiration of causing change and degradation, because that will be a message to all of us Ugandans, especially to the colleagues in the media fraternity. You've already reported stories of the various challenges that investments have caused on the environment in Uganda. But when it comes to climate change, I hope Joe will be able to speak to the carbon emissions and the green energy. It's true that climate change and human rights are increasingly interconnected issues that affect the long-term economic sustainability. At the global level, there are efforts to have these agreements. You've heard about the Paris agreements. In the realm of business and human rights, we have the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. That is agreed. But then at the regional level, for example, from the European Union, there have been efforts to pass various regulations that speak to these issues. And what is very hot in Uganda today is the EU deforestation regulation. That still sits in between the kingdom, also coming out to speak to what this regulation means for coffee farmers and how we will deal with accessing the EU market and the need for coffee farmers to be registered. So there are very many developments happening at the regional level. At the global level, there is a development of a legally binding treaty to regulate activities of transnational corporations in international human rights law. But also, when you come back to our country, we have the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights, which domesticates the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. And therein lies a great communication of corporate responsibility to respect human rights. So all those legal frameworks speak to the three subjects I've been tasked to speak about. I won't go into the Investment Code Act. Madam Jane has done that. So I'll try to speak to the intersections. My friend Faith Lumonya loves that word, the intersections of investment, climate change, and business and human rights. When you look at our country, the agriculture sector, for example, which employs approximately 70% of Uganda's workforce, that entire workforce is vulnerable to the changes that happen in the climate. The agriculture we run largely is dependent on the seasons. People know the seasons when to plant, when to harvest, and I'm not a farmer like any quintessential Ugandan, but at least I follow through the news and conversations. But it's largely dependent on seasons. Now, when climate change alters the seasons, then this entire workforce is going to be vulnerable because they will not be able to feed themselves. And so it has to be of great concern to us as the people in this room on how best we have to deal with the vagaries of climate change. There has been efforts towards the mitigation and adaptation. Through investment, our country has the nationally determined contributions. I think Jay will be able to speak so much to that perspective of how we reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, because that's what is known as the key cause of climate change. I was speaking to Uganda's vulnerability. According to the Global Climate Risk Index, Uganda is among the most vulnerable countries to climate change. And that requires that investment policies that promote resilience and adaptation to climate risk have to be advocated for. And that's the conversation we've always had with our member Siatini in calling for the reforms in Uganda's present Investment Code Act. For business and human rights, we agree that we have domesticated the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, and our member Resource Rights Africa is here very happy because they are always following up on the implementation of Uganda's National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. That now outlines the need for corporate due diligence to prevent human rights abuses, especially in sectors like mining, that Resource Rights Africa works so much on in the Karamoja region. I hope you'll be able to share in the plenary section to what extent the corporate actors in Karamoja are adhering to the requirements of due diligence to prevent human rights abuses as they go about their extractive business. Agriculture, infrastructure, where land and labor rights are at risk. Elizabeth from FIDA, our member as well, knows the extent to which they're going to protect women workers on flower farms. I hope she'll be able to share with us what they've done. It's true that investment projects, especially the land-based investment projects, affect land rights of Ugandans, because they need huge chunks of land to be able to set up. And colleagues in the media fraternity have covered these stories, for example, from Kiriandom. There is already something happening with one of those ranches in Kiriandom. They need land to be able to set up the huge farms. And that leads to displacement of communities, which threatens their livelihoods and worsens their poverty and vulnerability. When it comes to labor rights, the consortium has a documentary that looks at the labor rights of workers in the manufacturing sector. And it's not good. The adherence to occupational safety and health standards is lacking. How do we deal with this when we are causing a reform in our Investment Code Act? When it comes to the environment, the stories they said, pollution, deforestation, the extraction that Madame Jane was emphasizing as she made her presentation, all these come largely from the corporate actors not adhering to the existing legal and policy framework, but also the inadequacy to ensure implementation of that legal and policy framework. So how do we deal with that? It's true the current Investment Code Act as it is has certain gaps, whereas it promotes economic growth, aspires to promote economic growth. It doesn't look at the issue of integrating environmental sustainability or human rights protections. So that's one of the areas we have to look at to strengthen it, to strengthen our collection of laws when it comes to investment. Because we need investment for our country to grow. But how do we then ensure that issues of environmental sustainability and human rights protection are included? How do we ensure that there is emphasis on climate change, efforts of climate change mitigation and adaptation measures in these investment processes? I hope by the end of this half-day discussion, there will be ideas on how to achieve that. There is the call that Madame Jane made to embed sustainable development goals into our investment policies. And indeed, we should align our investment policies, particularly Goal 13 on climate action, Goal 8 on decent work and economic growth, but also goals, the investment projects in our country. John, I'm looking at time and I want to conclude that Uganda's Investment Code Act must be revised to reflect the emerging global priorities of climate action and respect for human rights. Achieving sustainable development requires investments not only to spur economic growth, but also to protect the environment and uphold the dignity and rights of all Ugandans that host these investments. So the way forward for us really lies in crafting a functional investment policy framework that balances development with climate resilience and social justice, and ensuring a prosperous and sustainable future for us Ugandans. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Joseph takes us through the practical work that we are doing within our institutions, but also the work that we are doing in influencing policy change in this country. Thank you so much for referring to even us who are sitting here for all the different pieces of work that we are doing around investments, around rights of women, around climate change, and all the adaptation measures that we are having. Joy, if you feel you can add something, I can move the microphone to you. But if not, we can jump into the plenary and let's have the discussion. So, before someone grab my okay. So all of us here have listened in to what Madame Jane was talking about the policy space that we are in, the NDP, the National Development Plan, talking about the aspirations of the investment arena that we are working in. She talked about the issues of embedding what it is we require in the investment space in the National Development Plans. And she also talked about the need to allocate roles to all the other actors. She talks about balancing the rights and obligations, where we're talking about investors, communities, and government, the requirements of respect, protect, and access to remedy. Yeah, we're talking about issues of ensuring that government has the space within the investment frameworks, so that it's not limited in regulating investment. And this is also a major thing. as all of us look to government to deal with the investments and the challenges coming with investment, we also do not realize that government in itself is limited within the frameworks it works within in the space at the regional, at the international, but also national. So we should also look at the limitations of government as it stands. It's talking about the investment state dispute settlement and also embedding human rights, the human rights impact assessment. So I open up for a discussion. I open up for us bringing up the ideas around these deliberations and plus that Joseph has talked about, to be able to fit within the reason that we are here, because today we are having a stakeholders meeting on the review of the Investment Code Act. Now that we are talking about a review of the Investment Code Act, and provided that we've had the challenges, but also the status that we are having as a country with regard to this continuum of rights that we have under the Investment Code Act, what are you suggesting? What are your observations? What are those areas that you think we should highlight as we get into discussions with the policymakers around the review of this Code Act? The room is, the space is open for us to start that discussion. Okay. When I noticed that 3/4 of us are on the phones, I noticed that 3/4 are using ChatGPT to get the submissions that we should be making that were within the room, but I'm still standing here waiting for at least the discussion that I do it again. I hope this time people won't be on the phones, so that we do it again together. Okay? Thank you so much. There's so much that has come before us. As we got into this meeting, we were reminded that we are part of a platform that is going to be discussing the review of the Investment Code Act. We have been reminded that in our different spaces of work, we've seen the gaps that exist with the Investment Code Act, especially around what it is that addresses issues of human rights, issues of the environment, because we realize that the Investment Code Act is primarily looking at issues of investment, the ability to bring in more investors and to realize the National Development Plan, which talks about moving from a peasant to a modern society through industrialization. That is where we are. But in all our institutions, in the work that we do, we also realize that there are those issues that we see coming up over and over again that are not addressed by the Investment Code Act, but that we feel we need to have in there, be addressed going forward. So as we come into this room, this is the discussion we want to have. As we get into this review, and as we put the policymakers to task to have this review and the amendment of this Investment Code Act, what are those things that we want to be seen, to be done? That is where we want the discussion to come from. I think now we can start that discussion.
It's not much better. Yeah, thanks so much. Actually, my name. I haven't read through the court. I haven't read through the code. It's fair, but there are a number of issues, and maybe I'll stick to a very controversial part of it. We've been hearing of incentives given to foreign investors, and also, if you checked, there is the meeting which Kasita, Kampala Capital State.
Oh, yeah.
Kampala Capital.
There's nothing.
Something trade association.
There's nothing.
Those issues were raised actually, and it shows how unfair the code is. One, that the foreign investors are given a lot of
Hello?
incentives.
Yes, hello?
Which is
Hello, nizagaruka muntere.
if you compare it to what
Nizagaruka
local
mu-
investor would maybe get. if you're a local investor, you can't have access to land easily. And they need maybe a very high amount of, the capital. There's, I think, a limit for you to be given some of those incentives. But for foreigners, sometimes they come with nothing. This is not only in Uganda, actually. It is happening in LDCs, low developed countries or economies, and causing a lot of unfairness. And from a climate change or climate justice angle, that is further creating, more vulnerability for our local businesses, because they're also impacted by climate change, even worse. Now, what should be like, that code should clearly come up and define what's the nature of incentive that one qualifies for. For example, if a company is coming here or a local company is here, you would look at, if I'm going to invest maybe, I don't know which business, but say cement factory, because there are so many nowadays. You should be able to prove how much of the carbon emissions you are going to reduce. The more you reduce, the more your incentive goes up. Because in the SAIA regulations, we provided for it, that a company has to, provide initially emission data. They must come with it, because it's going to be used in the audits. So in the incentive, in the code here, should also translate into how much are you going to reduce. And that should correspond to the incentive that you are given. So companies that bring in technologies that reduce emissions, companies that are going to employ many people, as Madam Jane said, those that provide decent jobs. You should be able to prove that these jobs are decent. Unlike what I see so many jobs, but people are earning like 5,000. In the flower industry, it is worse. With my sister here, we used to go and disturb them. So the issue of incentives becomes very, very important and must be related to a number of other factors. Then the issue of intellectual property rights, because one of the problems we are having in technology transfer, the lawyers are here, that technology is developed in the global north. Coming here, it is very difficult. If somebody finds you with their technology, they will sue you. Yet for climate change, we've been advocating for transfer of technology. There's a whole thematic working group on technology transfer. Now, how does it relate to our investment code? What should the investment code provide for? That if I want to access technology, what's the role of government, for example, to give me, it would support me to access that technology. It could be proprietary technology, it could be one which is generic, like the guys who are doing medicines. So we need to look at some of those issues, IPR, incentives, and then the disincentives. All those must be well defined in the investment code. Because if you do that, then automatically you'll see companies complying with some of the good practices. Yeah. There are more to add, maybe other colleagues will add.
Thank you so much for those submissions. In one of the engagements with the Uganda Investment Authority, and I will still our task Elizabeth, probably their regulation, it can't be within the program, but their regulation speaks to the fact that to be considered an investor in this country, you must be upwards of $50,000
for a local investor.
Yes, upwards of $50,000. You have to export 70%, and land comes in as an incentive. So land is not something you invest in to acquire. Land comes in as an incentive. And you see where now the challenge is. Yet the other people are struggling to first acquire land, which takes a big chunk of what they have to invest, and then be able to invest. So these are the discussions, and maybe we could talk about where that is. Is it in the regulations? I tried to look up this information. It was provided by Uganda Investment Authority, but I can't seem to find it. So this is a discussion we should have. Are these the thresholds that we are talking about that are going to transform us from a peasant to a modern society? Are we actually having the peasant move with this investment, or it's an investment that is going to be done by someone to redeem a peasant? These are discussions that we need to have, and we need also to be grounded in having this discussion. Let's get to Joya.
Yes, ladies first.
Thank you so much, Joe. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joy. John, you really did take me by surprise. So maybe just to continue with the conversation, I'd also like to say, for purposes of observing protocol, I think it's not fair for us to say that I talk about matters climate change when we have the National Coordinator for the Climate Action Network in the room. So he should be the right authority to speak about that. So for me, just to add on to the conversation, I would like to, again, start from the point of view of value addition for our minerals. I'm going to look at it more from the extractive side, where we are talking oil, gas, but also the mineral resources that we have. It is no secret to us that Uganda is blessed with vast mineral resources, which really have the potential to spur us in as far as economic development, economic growth, our GDP is concerned. But almost for the last 3 years, if you look at the reports that come from the Office of the Auditor General, reports are indicating that we are losing over 2 trillion annually to illicit financial flows. And we are having these figures in a country where in 2015, if we all recall, the president banned the exportation of our raw minerals. So you would expect that a ban such as that is going to be able to curtail some of these malpractices that affect the resources that we have. And so again, we need to think of, why do we have illicit financial flows happening? Are we not able as a country, do we have the technology, like Anthony was talking about, in terms of technology transfer? Why haven't we got to that place where we are able to add value to our minerals so that we can get more from it, as opposed to waiting for the Chinese or from people from another country to come and add value to our minerals, or to export them, and then once they are refined, they are brought back and sold to us at a higher price. So we really need to think critically about whether, if the code captures the aspect of value addition, and what strategies are in place to ensure that
is being deliberated upon and happening right now at Fairway. This is coming in live, it's a live stream, and quite some good news. Now remember yesterday, right here on Smart 24 TV, between 9 and 10 yesterday, we did have this conversation when we invited Mr. Katongole coming in from Kasita, still talking about almost more or less the same thematic area. You can be able to access this footage right on YouTube. Get there, you will find us on most of our social media pages. You can find us on X, Facebook, as well as YouTube. But you can be able to recap on that conversation that we had with Mr. Katongole from Kasita, talking about investment. What is the scoop? And what is it all about? Now, back, we talked about the fact that there were challenges, and the different, the traders did not know, were asking themselves, how far should these investors that we are seeing, how far should they go? Why are they doing jobs that are meant to be for the local citizens of Uganda? And to iron out that story, that particular answer to that, this is what is happening right now at Fairway Hotel. To be able to define the scoop and find out for sure, a foreign investor that is coming within Uganda, what are they supposed to be doing? How much should be their investment capital? Now, earlier on this year, the COA group, this was under Siatini. Siatini established an investment COA group made up of different civil society organizations working on investment-related issues and other key developmental dimensions. The broader objective, of course, of the COA group is to advocate for the enactment of pro-development investment-related policies and laws and agreements at the national and regional levels. And right now, this particular working group, this group here at the moment currently is seated right now deliberating, of course, on this particular content, on this particular issue right now at the Fairway Hotel. Now, remember, in the last couple of years, we have been looking at the different dimensions of investment, looking at the different gaps and what can be done to address it. Let me just give you just a hint of the Investment Code Act 2019. Normally, and within this, it is meant to identify the scope, identify these particular sectors that are there for the offering for foreign investors to come and partake in, to assist potential investors in identifying and establishing investment projects in Uganda. You do realize it should be categorically clear that not every sector is up for foreign direct investment in Uganda. So you cannot have, you should not have really, as has been challenged down here, downtown, you should not have so-called investor actually selling food and retailing shoes and carrying out mobile money transactions. You should not, you know, at that level, at a mobile money agent level, you should not be having that. There are particular investment sectors that should be highlighted for them to participate in. And of course, to propose and advocate policies and measures that will enhance investment in Uganda, to undertake annual evaluations of the progress and state of investment in the country. These are some of the contentious issues that are brought down in the Investment Code Act. However, what is happening right now, reviewing the Investment Code Act 2019, it is believed, of course, as we have been highlighting earlier on in our conversations, that this particular act does not actually take into consideration the welfare, does not take into consideration the benefits, the beneficial side of the citizens, the local citizens of Uganda. It looks at the fact that right now, anyone is coming into the country under the pretext of investment. It is looking at more or less the safety issues. These were highlighted, of course, here at Smart 24 TV, looking at those within the flower sector, flowers for export sector. We have had stories here being aired out, of course, about the fact that they really work not only for the barest amount of monies. Minimum wage is not even highlighted when you talk about that. And these are gaps that are being rectified, especially when you look at that particular meeting going on right now at Fairway Hotel. Smart 24 TV is bringing you the latest so that you can find out if you have been questioning yourself and asking yourself, why is it that I'm seeing this particular person of Asian descent, this Asian, this Chinese, this Turkish. We talked about these very same things yesterday morning. Why are they engaged in paver making? Why are they selling shoes downtown? Why are they doing all sorts of things? It is because of the gaps that are highlighted within some of these different policies. So right now, this is happening, this particular meeting, the validation meeting for the draft policy statement. The validation meeting for the draft policy statement is happening right now at Fairway Hotel. Siatini, remember, came in and established the Investment COA Group, which is a loose coalition of relevant civil society organizations working on investment-related issues and other key development dimensions. The broader objective of this COA group is to advocate for the enactment of pro-development investment-related policies, as well as laws and agreements at the national and regional levels. This should be able to give you something. So there is reviewing. Right now, this meeting is aimed at reviewing the Investment Code Act 2019. Now, this comes, of course, as well in the wake of what happened at the Chinatown recently, and this is why we have had subsequent conversations on this, such as the one we had yesterday on Business Insight here from 9 to 10 yesterday, where we did host Mr. Katongole from Kasita to come and tell us exactly. And these same pertinent issues that were being talked about and challenges are the same gaps really that are being talked about in the reviewing of the Investment Code Act 2019. Please get onto our social media pages and let us know what you think. If there is any particular area that is a little bit ambiguous that you do not understand, please let us know so that we can highlight it further. But right now, this particular meeting is happening at this moment. Let us get back into the live event right now.
Are these 100 children getting education? At the cost of a whole community and their households, perhaps. At the cost of a whole lineage losing land. We've had instances in Kamuni where people used to own land as late as just 5 years ago, that they've owned land for all their lives, these families, and they are now squatters on that owner, like they are laborers on that land that now has been taken by private people that are employing them on the farms that they previously owned. I think that's a very sad state of affairs if we have citizens right now, and it's because they have no option. If I come with you with money to tell you, by the company even I'm putting here, all your children will come and work. Even all the other people will come and work. In fact, we are setting up a school. In fact, this is the dream of this village. Without accountability being at the center, without citizens' power being respected and their decisions, I don't think we can talk about huge investment plans in this country without fixing or looking at all those.
Thank you so much, Liz. Those are times we hear words like state capture, corporate capture. CS also have a lot of English. Thank you so much. That's yes. No, please.
So I wasn't sure when to come in. I thought I would come in after Herbert's presentation, but some things are itching me, so I thought I can talk about them. My name is Robert Suna. I'm an independent consultant on tax, trade, and investment. Colleagues, my most intriguing question is, we tend to argue these things and act as if we are somewhere in an enclave as Uganda alone, and we are not part of the global economy. So that's how I dropped my interest in microeconomics and went macro. We are in the East African community and we are talking about the Investment Code Act. But some years ago, me and Faith, if I remember very well, we are advocating for the implementation of the East African Community Investment Model Investment Code. I think it was like that. I don't know the progress to that effect. But that said, let's just look at the code itself and you compare with the East African community countries. The definition of an investor. For Uganda, when we revised the 2019 code, we provided for a domestic investor to include a person, a natural person, or a company incorporated within the East African community, all partner states. So, in our code now, that is a local investor, a Kenyan, a Tanzanian, South Sudan, DRC, as a natural person or a company can come here and get a 50K as a minimum capital requirement and invest in Uganda. In Tanzania, their code is even more recent, and even the one of Kenya. They are still calling us foreign investors. Their local investor is, their foreign investor includes anyone who is not Tanzanian or who is not Kenyan. So as we are trying to harmonize in the sake of the East African community in our law, the other members are not yet on board. That creates differentials in terms of investor choices. Because if I can go to Kenya, I will require a minimum capital requirement of a foreign investor. While for them, when they are coming to Uganda, they are treated as locals. So even the incentives to that effect are different. So I thought that harmonization bit needs to be looked at. The issue is the minimum capital requirements across the countries. In Uganda, foreign investors, non-East African community members, all companies that are not integrated, incorporated in East Africa, $250,000 US, and then local investors, $50,000 US. Kenya, $100,000 US for a foreign investor, and 1 million Kenyan shilling. You can convert to dollars. That's very little minimum requirement. What does that mean? That whereas you require less capital to start as a foreigner in Kenya, or you require more to come to Uganda. So a Kenyan may be driven to leave Kenya and come in Uganda because here is treated as local at 50K. While when he's in his country, it's Kenyan shilling 1 million is about $8,000 US. $8,000 US. He can get an investment certificate. So you see those differentials. In Tanzania, it's higher, $500,000 US and $300,000 for domestic investors. But remember, in Tanzania again, you are a foreign investor if you're a member of the African community. Any non-Tanzanian is a foreign investor. So we need that part of harmonization if you are discussing in terms of definition of who is an investor, but also the minimum capital requirements. Is it about the economics that we determine the amount, or we can have the same base for foreign and domestic? What is the government priority? And secondly, it takes me back to my sister Elizabeth's submission on as an answer to her question on whether we are serious when it comes to such issues like human rights protection and investment and the rest. And I want to categorically say, with my experience, the government priorities vis-a-vis what they do are usually not matching.
Is that experience of Uganda?
Yes, and I mean, when you asked, I think I can't even stand. When you yes, when you ask a question, for instance, when people are discussing minimum wage, the question was, are we interested in the minimum wage or creating employment first? So, and quote unquote, the president was like, I think our first interest should be, let's employ as many Ugandans as possible, regardless of the conditions. We can discuss the minimum wage later. So what is your priority in that case? Are you pursuing massive employment or protection of human rights? So the incoherence between our policies, I'll want what gives an answer to your question. Last, maybe I'll discuss more with the submission. The other issue is, again, a policy and a regulatory issue. Our bilateral investment treaties, or what we call the international investment agreements, if you compare them with the other existing legal framework, there are many issues to go in, especially the one on investors, investment dispute settlement. The way the bilateral investment treaties are designed, they are meant to protect the interests of the investor against the state. But that's what it is. The investor's rights sometimes surpass those of the state. So you can complain and say, no, we have a domestic legal framework that is strong, but even the code provides that you have to first negotiate before you take for arbitration. But quite often, we end up in arbitration, and the costs of arbitration for small countries like Uganda are immense. So the design of the legal framework alone is intended to protect. And when I deal with taxation, we have our taxation agreements. Those ones at least are state to state. But investment treaties are investor against what? And state. You have the capacity to battle a strong investor whose profit annually is 100-fold of your gross domestic product. I submit.
Thank you so much. We're going to take the break. We're going to have tea. You've earned tea with all these submissions. And we're going to be followed through with any other submissions that we may be having after this, after the break. So please, let's take a break. Let's have tea. We want to take the opportunity to also welcome our newest participant today. He's a member of Parliament. Let me give him an opportunity to introduce himself. And we're glad to have you here. We know that there's a lot going on at Parliament. And we're glad that
Thank you. My name is Andrews Lee. Member of Parliament. I sit to you and sent here to represent the chair here.
Thank you so much, Mr. We're glad to have you. Let's take a tea break and let's be back in. We're going to use only 20 minutes for the tea break and we'll be back. So thank you so much.
Remember, this is still live, happening right now at Fairway Hotel. And this has been really, as we talked about, the reviewing of the Investment Code Act 2019, the Investment Code Act 2019. Now, what is it all about? This year, earlier this year, Siatini established the Investment Core Group, a loose coalition of relevant civil society organizations and stakeholders working on investment-related issues and other key development dimensions. The broader objective of the core group is to advocate for the enactment of pro-development investment-related policies, laws, and agreements at the national and regional levels. Now, this particular the core group developed a draft policy statement that is intended to inform our collective advocacy for the review of the Investment Code Act 2019. And this particular one, of course, what is being highlighted is the fact that this particular act, the Investment Code Act, the Investment Code Act 2019, does not take into consideration the plight and the situation of the locals, really, the Ugandan locals. It does not protect in any way. There are a couple of gaps that are in, just like we mentioned earlier on here at Smart 24 TV. We have brought you a couple of stories whereby minimum wage was not affected nor highlighted. The scope of investment for foreign investors has not been, has not been clearly earmarked out. And if at all there is any violation, it has not necessarily been brought to book. It has not brought the violators to book. And we had this same discussion just right about just a little bit of hinting on it. Just yesterday from 9 to 10, you can find this conversation that we had with Mr. Katongole from Kasita between 9 and 10 on Business Insight yesterday, talking about, of course, the different challenges and the annoyances of Ugandan traders saying, why is a Chinese selling boots down in Chikubo? Why is an Indian making chapats or something like that, or cooking, getting into the catering business? Why is a Turkish national coming in under under the brackets of foreign investor, and yet making these pavers as we are seeing him. There was quite a lot of sentiment and challenges that were coming in. Well, this is the main reason why this particular meeting is currently being held right now at the Fairway Hotel. What is this Investment Code Act all about 2019? It is really looking at a couple of things, such as really identifying the scope of investment, those particular activities. It even gets down to the investment, not only just identifying and putting a bracket, the scope of investment that is allowed for foreign investors as well as domestic investors. But of course, you get to see as well the different areas that should be put into play, the different policies and measures that will enhance investment in Uganda, the annual regulations or evaluations of the progress and state of investment in Uganda. This is what will be enabled. And of course, it does maintain a register of all investment licenses issued under this particular act. Now, of course, when it comes down to different pertinent issues, it gets to talk about where can this foreign investor, where is this foreign investor supposed to invest? It looks at some of those areas. Now, in both ends, when you look at that, it's already earmarked. That means at any one time, you are looking at the not only return on investment, but it also looks at what are you benefiting as a country. So you're earmarking those particular sectors. Is it agriculture, industrialization? Is it technology? Is it rural? Is it renewable energy? Those are the specific particular areas that we would want more or less FDIs going in, the foreign direct investors and investment getting right into those particular areas, infrastructure as well. Now, if you do not particularly earmark and put these areas aside, you do stand, of course, the fact that a couple of violations will happen, just as is happening right now, getting to see that purportedly certain what is meant to be a foreign investor is coming down, but there is no minimum wage being put in place. You don't have the scope of the activities in which should really be clearly spelled out within this Investment Code Act, is not really put out there, is not being implemented really, and is not being enforced as well. And that is why minimum violations, minimum wage violations are happening, safety violations are happening, working conditions are ridiculous, and in most cases you do have, of course, the fact had been said that the enforcement takes quite a long time. It was said right yesterday in our conversation with Mr. Katongole from Kasita that it is, once you raise some of these pertinent issues, that sometimes it takes quite a while for any remedial action to be done, any particular enforcement to be done. But of course, with the CSOs coming in and Siatini doing whatever it can to ensure that the other CSOs and different stakeholders, key players are brought on board, happening right now at Fairway Hotel, we do hope that really an umbrella of these collective agencies and collective organizations and key players will be able to push and advocate for the seriousness of this matter. Because all these different riots that are happening, all these different disgruntlements that are coming in from traders downtown, and even right now, it's coming out from this imbalance, the gaps that are being talked about right now at Fairway Hotel. But the reality about it, as had been hinted on yesterday, and right now in the wake of the lines that were happening at Chinatown recently, trust me, we are driving business. We are very keen here at Smart 24 TV. We know for sure that sometimes the economy, the impact on the economy, the adverse negative impacts on the economy of such gaps such as this is so detrimental. Now, however, on the other side, when you flip the coin, you get to see that whereas it seemingly came out as if it was viral, the fun, and yes, we have our money, let's go shopping. The reality for the trader, the Ugandan trader who is stuck with those taxes, trying to make a living, it is not fun. It is not fun. And we did come against any xenophobia, any xenophobic tendencies and violence tendencies. We do know that this is right at the broad of, at the edge of normalcy. It is at the edge of quite a tension-filled edge. And we do implore that these particular insight minutes, insight moments are not meant to fuel any xenophobic tendencies in any way. We're just highlighting the sentiments that are down on ground, not only just in Uganda, within Kampala, but elsewhere as well, because wherever you go, they are purportedly foreign investors, but carrying on particular activities that should be within the scope of just the locals, the local citizens. So indeed, it is imperative right now that we do have more and more insight into this, and there be an urgency created in regards to what can be done. When you look at the blurred sections in between who should do what and who should do the other side, and if at all a foreign investor does come in, how should the Ugandan be treated? We have talked about this here at Smart 24 TV, about instances where, for example, in China, you do know that it is quite any sort of investment, foreign investment, is tailored really to make as much impact as possible in some of these countries, such as China. You will notice that they are very particular when it comes to recruitment. They are very particular about the wages that are paid by foreign investors to the Chinese nationals. So we have asked ourselves quite a number of times here at Smart 24 TV, why isn't this happening in our own country, Uganda? This particular conversation happening right now, this dialoguing happening right now at Fairway Hotel is very, very apt for this particular situation. Now remember, in the wake and in light of the fact that this is post-pandemic, we are just coming out of the closure, this particular post the COVID-19 pandemic. We have reported this here at Smart 24 TV. Our team has captured that footage showing that Ugandan businesses are not yet back on 2 feet. They are still struggling. You have quite a number of businesses that have actually been forced to move away from the city center, moving away and going rather into the peripherals, all in a bid to survive. So, and what are they saying? They're saying the taxes are too high. They're saying the rent is too high. And amongst all their other challenges as well, they are saying that direct competition coming in and flooding of the commodities by different foreign investors who are more or less violating this Trade and Investment Code Act is so apparent, but it is so affecting them, and no one seems to be doing anything. The traders have been crying about this for a couple of years right now. We would want, of course, that this will be highlighted, and we will leave you looking at some of these, even as they have gone into a break. Is it relevant for you? Please get onto our social media pages. Let us know. For that person who gets to find all those sandals and all those different products that have been dumped at a much cheaper price at 7,000 shillings, and yet the trader is stuck, who went through the entire legitimate process and paid his taxes and is still paying his taxes and is within the shops, sometimes is within the shops or elsewhere and the supermarkets and all these, and is doing what he is supposed to do. Why is he being given the shorter end of the bargain when it comes to that? I think Uganda must do quite a lot. The relevant officials in the relevant docket must do what they are supposed to do to ensure that the investment climate does not go downhill. And of course, we do not want our Ugandan businesses, traders and all these to lose morale. Now remember, Uganda has been highlighted as one of the most enterprising countries, filled with quite a number of entrepreneurs. But they also tell you, sadly, that these businesses do not live to see their first birthday. Why is it happening? Because of lack of very loose gaps, the looseness of some of these pertinent acts and the policies and these laws and the poor enforcement that is within Uganda right now. So this conversation is needed, happening right now at Fairway Hotel. A couple of Siatini brought together a technical group, a coalition made up of different stakeholders, key players when it comes to advocacy for development and positive investment really arena in Uganda. What are they talking about? They are reviewing the Investment Code Act 2019. We will be, of course, giving you much more in regards to that. But get onto our social media pages. You can find us on X, on Facebook and YouTube, and let us know what your sentiment is. In fact, we would want to have some news as well from you as a business person, as someone who knows a business person. Have you seen any particular change in the business life? Are you seeing the disgruntlement? Are you able to pick up on the negativity that is coming from the investment arena? We did have a couple of sentiments recently picked up by our Smart 24 team recently on ground, and they were saying it seems to be all rosy for foreign investors coming into the country. They're the industrial parks they can be able to access. They're the different tax incentives, just a couple of 10 years, and then you have a tax break. And of course, even this was mentioned that the majority are taking advantage of these particular gaps. They come in, do their 10 years, do whatever they can, maximize on their profits, and then leave the country. And then another new bunch comes again, takes advantage of the 10-year break. So really, when it comes to effectiveness and the ability to evaluate this consistently, how is it working out for Uganda? This particular conversation happening right now, Siatini and the coalition of different civil society organizations pushing for development and pro-development policies, as well as a positive and a good investment climate environment in Uganda is happening right now and live, being covered live here on Smart 24 TV. We're going to take a short break and then we will dive back and leave you. You will have the rest of this meeting that is happening, this dialoguing that is happening right now, a review of the Investment Code Act 2019 happening right now at Fairway Hotel. Let's take a short break and we will dive back right into the live session.
Smart 24, driving business.
Are you a woman entrepreneur or a woman owning a business and looking for affordable financing to scale up your business? Look no further than the Grow Loan. Grow Loan targets female entrepreneurs nationwide. Key features include a minimum loan amount of 4 million and a maximum loan amount of 200 million shillings, a maximum interest rate not exceeding 10.5% per annum, a loan repayment period not exceeding 24 months. All Grow Loan borrowers must comply with the Grow Project environmental and social standards. Special incentives are available for borrowers that are refugees or from the refugee host communities, people living with disabilities, and women entrepreneurs from the underserved or minority groups. To apply, contact any of the 6 participating financial institutions. Contact us for more information or visit our website at www.grow.go.ug. The Grow Loan is an intervention under the Grow Project, a Government of Uganda project financed by the World Bank and implemented by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development and the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. Grow, generating growth opportunities and productivity for women enterprises.
Mama nyabo, ino internet wenyukanga ekizungirizi. Ate kamera ya yolumamyo. Banange ebyandaka kubogo. Fun battery full. Buno mugano gwenyini. Funa kabodi Super kati ku nsimbi ezisaliddwako ng'otandika kusinza emitwalo 49 zokka. Usasule mpola mpola sinsi 833 buli lunaku. Weewangulire omugano gwa Kabode Super okuva ku MTN Christmas eno. Weefunire gig 2 eza data wa MTN buli mwezi okumala emyezi 8. Weegambulire Kabode Super kati okuva ku dduuka lya MTN wonna mu ggwanga. Everywhere you go, MTN. Ekolera wansi w'amateeka ga UCC.
3 inspired souls brought together by love are set on a life-changing journey.
This is your life, Mackenzie. This is no longer a dream.
It's just something about Mackenzie.
I'll never marry you.
Your position does not allow you to break work relationship rules.
Where choices change everything. Crossroads, weekdays at 8 p.m. on Power Magic Prime. DSTV channel 148, GoTV channel 303.
This is Jordan. When it comes to classwork, Jordan is magic. Jordan shines. Jordan makes his peers better. Jordan is a true leader. White Star Magic family. Be a leader. Be magic.
Smart 24, driving business.
Welcome to yet another episode of Women in Business. I'm Doreen Kemcha, and this is Smart 24 TV. With me today, I have an interesting woman, businesswoman, Mrs. Jerry Opoka. Some of you may have seen her, others have attended her classes because she's the CEO of Soul Fitness. She's a mother, she's a wife, she's a philanthropist, she's full of life, and in her own words, she enjoys life to the maximum. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you.
Delighted to have you.
I'm more delighted.
It's so funny, even as we spoke, just getting to know each other and talking about this and this, we've been laughing for more than 80%, 80% of the time, right?
Yes.
You spread the love.
I try. I do my best.
And you're full of life as well.
Yes, I am.
And I find it so uncanny that, and this is what I mentioned to her, that her business, which you're going to talk about, is all about fun, and sometimes it doesn't feel like business because she does what she loves. Tell us just a little bit about that. How did you start? What's your unique perspective? Was it an accident? How did you start your business?
I think it was an accident. I was fired from my corporate job.
Like, that is how we start this. That's how we start this episode.
I was fired from my job, but I was also tired of it. I hated my job. I hated my boss. I hated everyone in the office. They hated me back.
Really?
We really were having...
You weren't gelling?
Yeah, we're not gelling anymore. I did nearly 10 years in MTN and 4 years in Airtel. But I think I was tired. I was done with the corporate scene, but I did not have the confidence to walk away. I mean, walk away to what? I did not define myself as the business woman type.
Yeah.
So I did not know where I was going to go, but I knew that I didn't want to go to another job. So when I left, I decided to take a break. By that time, I just started attending dance class, and I started teaching some sessions. So I decided, let me rest a bit while I think of what I'm going to do. And in the resting, I'm going to dance. So just have a bit more classes.
In the resting, you're going to dance.
Yes, just have a bit more classes and just lie to myself that I'm doing something. Especially after dropping the children to school, then I had nothing else to do. And a few months in, I just kind of felt like, I love this. Like, I love the fact that I dance in the morning. and I dance in the evening, and I do absolutely nothing
throughout
the day.
Yes.
So much so that when somebody came to me and said there is a job somewhere, a new organization is looking for a director, I thought, I know what that means. A new job, a new organization, director, the pressure that comes with
to make
that,
an impact and have
I
everything.
said, no, I don't care how much money they're giving. But I didn't know how to say, I cannot take the job. So I lied. I've sent you my CV. Oh, you didn't receive it. Oh, you know, and the guy kept saying,
yes, I
what's
haven't seen
wrong?
it. Yeah.
I think a month later, I just said, I can't continue this. I said to him, I can't take the job. And he said, why? Is this dancing thing
Is this all
paying
want to
you
do?
enough?
Yes.
I was barely making 2 million shillings. Barely. And I said, I can only go to a job that allows me to work in shorts. Because by that time I was wearing shorts like every day, all the time.
What a flimsy
I said, can they let me, you know? He said, of course not. I said, no, then I can't take it.
But you see, it's different. I love to hear all these different varied stories from the women that we get to talk to, women in business, because each woman comes with her own unique perspective. Now, when someone talks to you and sees you right now, you are literally the epitome of confidence, you know, and you try to spread this around. I have spoken to some guests, and most of them have defiantly broken away from their former jobs and said, no, I don't want to do this. I'm going to do what? I'm going to start my own thing. But with you, who is the epitome of confidence right now, you just didn't have the confidence to break away. Yeah,
I did not.
And then you kept bringing in these flimsy excuses and everything. So what happened after that?
So I just decided that because I did not know what I wanted, I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I did not want.
Yeah.
It was to go back to another job where I was going to be
And get
late.
stuck in a rut.
Late. The thought that came to my mind was, if I'm late going back after lunch, and somebody asked me one more time, why are you late?
You quit.
I will wring their necks. Because I just thought that was like I'm in a box.
You're done with it.
I'm in a box. And I said, you know, that I wasn't going to go back to. So I thought, because I don't know what I want,
let me first take some time.
let me throw everything that I have right now into the dancing and just shut out all the noise. For now, if I'm dancing, that is all I'm going to do. And that is, I'm going to just
put everything.
Everything.
But by then you were a dancing instructor?
Yes, I started doing dance instruction.
That was morning and evening?
Morning and evening, yes.
At one of the hotels
At
around,
one of the,
right?
No, one of the gyms in town.
One of the gyms in town.
At Acacia Mall.
Yes.
Paradise Fitness City.
Oh, yeah. That's how you started.
That's where I started.
And then you got hooked.
Then I got
But
hooked.
you were already hooked before.
I love dancing very much, like any other form. I don't even like walking. I take the lift. I'm the lift girl. I always say someone has to be able to review the performance of the lift and not the stairs. So I say to myself, for a long time, I wanted to do a workout that involved dancing. So back in the day when our music scene was not anything to write home about, I used to think if I could find a choreographer and dance with them as they practiced for, you know, whichever artist, you know, I would love to do that as exercise. So fast forward so many years later, I find a dance class that I love so much. And while I was in the class, I always felt like, you know, the reflection of the mirror showed me people who were not quite getting a move right. And I wanted to go and show them. I always, in fact, after the class, I'd go to some of the ladies and say, you know, if you pull it like this.
Smart 24, driving business.
the one of 2019, we were given different chapters. So we need to establish whether it is still maintain this Act of 2019 or it has a new nomenclature for it to be sure that we're dealing with the right act. And also some of the laws, they even rearrange the sections. So we also need to establish whether actually the sections that we're referring to in the old act are the same section that actually the new act has come in the development.
Thank you so much, Mr. Triachia. It's a very, very keen observation and that we need to follow through. So welcome, Mr. Herbert Kafero, to come and deliver.
Thank you so much, moderator, Mr. John Mwere, and I would like to first welcome Honorable for joining us, and he truly sits on a very important committee of national economy. So we are, in a way, speaking to powers that be and those that have really some powers to change things. Because certain times we speak to ourselves and it sort of curtails our efforts. Because there is not so much we can do, but collectively, we can do what we need to do in the technical bit of it, and then we relay the same to policymakers, and it's good to have Honorable here. But also, I would like to also first pick it up from what the moderator shared. This investment group is truly critical, not just looking at the Investment Code Act 2019, but also other investment-related laws, because here we are talking about the review of the Investment Code Act 2019, but there are other investment-related laws, because even the Companies Act is investment-related. Competition is investment-related. Local content is investment-related. PPDA is investment-related. So the role that we have is broad. And we have so far taken some baby steps. At least the group is constituted, and we are still inviting more members to the group. And our role is clear, to contribute to shaping the development and enactment of pro-development investment-related policies that recognize human and environmental rights. And that's within our reach, because at least the constituencies that we represent are touched by all those issues. So in a way, our role is critical. I would like to first speak to the context, but I'm continuing with the discussion that we already started on, because from the submissions that we've all contributed, there is momentum for the discussion. But just for emphasis, world overinvestment is important. In fact, at Siatini, like the ED shared earlier, Siatini is not against investment, and I know this is a shared feeling across the different sectors that we represent, that we need investments, isn't it?
Yes.
We truly do need investments, because resource-constrained countries like Uganda need these investments, either from the private sector or from foreigners, the foreign investors. But the issues around how we attract, how investors carry their business, that's the business we're here to look at. But the broader objectives, countries need investments to drive economic growth and sustainable development. Issues of technology and skills transfer are important, because with investments, then we have innovation, technology, skills transfer. Those are promises of investments. In fact, I'm speaking to promises of investments. Job creation, those are promises of investments. Improved livelihoods, those are promises of investments. Issues of environmental sustainability, those are promises. And we will interrogate later whether our Investment Code Act 2019 is fit for purpose. But before we delve into that, it's important to also recognize the fact that investments support the realization of national development plans and aspirations, especially for low-income countries, that there are challenges, multiple development crises, and debt is one of them. So investment, when we attract investors in strategic sectors, we can be able to get a shortcut to the development plans and aspirations that we want to achieve. And the issue around investment policies, even our investment code is not only for foreigners, and we don't want to, as a collective, we don't want to be misquoted that we are talking about foreign investors. But we recognize that investment policies
also look at local and foreign investors. And that's critical to talk about. And also they feed into economic and structural transformation. We're going to look at the regime, the existing investment regime. I earlier talked about the investment-related policies. Beyond the Investment Code Act, there are other investment-related policies. And these are the policies. The Companies Amendment Act 2022, Uganda Free Zones Act, among others. All these are investment-related. And so we shouldn't lose sight of the same. One of us here, in fact, it's Robert, who spoke about the issue of policy incoherence across our policies. That there is incoherence. And yet, to achieve the development aspirations and the different things we want to get, economic structure transformation, these policies must reinforce each other and speak to each other. So I know most of us have seen this illustration, but this illustration is important. And at Siatini, we've used it over the years. All those investment policies can threaten the right to food, education, land, decent work, fair compensation, health and safe environment, life. They can also threaten the government's ability to regulate in public interest. They can also threaten development, and also the protection of marginalized groups. So it's important to recognize that based on how investment policies or investment-related policies are crafted, they can either help us to realize the different promises or aspirations or curtail the same. And there is a struggle. There was an issue that Ms. Jane Alunga talked about, the contestation. And we recognize that the same is still at play. There's a struggle between governments exercising their state duty to protect human and environmental rights and to promote investors' interests, which is actually a growing concern. So it's the investment policy that either gives government powers to regulate in public interest, or the power is lost to investors. And we don't want to overemphasize the issue of liberalization, because most of the investment policies are anchored within the neoliberal paradigm, within liberalization, is that we are living, in fact, on the investment policies, for all of us that have checked them out, there is the issue of protection and promotion. It's clearly spelled out. So, and a number of our technocrats and policymakers have, on different occasions, talked about how we need to protect investors. You know, there is the popular statement of leave my investors. There's someone who usually says that. So here, we're actually touching a sacred... Yes, we don't want to name and shame, but it's important that even the decrees, in a way, promote these human and environmental violations, because it's like we've protected, we've given them a red carpet. And some of the distinguished scholars, like Professor Ezra Suruma, some years back, wrote an article where he was cautioning government not to pamper investors. In fact, that investors should have money while they are coming to Uganda. We shouldn't pamper them like as if they are doing us a favor. It's a win-win. And at Siatini, that's what we are talking about. That we want investors to win, but we also want the government to win in terms of revenue. We want communities to win, because these are the places where investors are hosted, communities, and most of them most times decry the negative spillover effects of investments. And you know, there are issues of extraction, where deep pits are dug in different communities, and that land can no longer be used for agriculture. So that compromises food security. So there are a number of negative spillover effects that these investments can contribute to. But it's all, to mitigate that, we need to craft them in a way that the investment policies by themselves can help us to achieve what we want. But also even the authorities that are mandated to monitor and regulate these investments they have to be fully functional in terms of even having the capacity, but also to monitor and regulate. And the issues of government agencies, they have to coordinate these operations, and there must be a central coordination unit. I'll speak to that later. And there is a pushback. In fact, this is where we appreciate that there is concern around business and human rights, but also the operations of businesses and how they impact human and environmental rights. There's a pushback on the primacy of human and environmental rights in investment. In fact, it's not just investment, but also trade and investment. And we recognize that the pushback has yielded or culminated into, for example, the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. And it also has culminated into the African Union Guiding Principles on large-scale land-based investments and the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. I don't want to overemphasize this because the previous speaker has already alluded to this. In fact, when Joseph was speaking, he talked about how the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights are domesticated through the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. But then we will talk about where the problem is. Because with all these efforts and the pushback, where is the problem? We will get to that. And there is the international financial institutions, IFI's environmental and social safeguard mechanisms. These are also in place. And the International Labour Organization Decent Work Agenda. The issue of decent work has come to the fore because with investments, the challenge of workers working under precarious conditions cannot be ignored, among others. And we've been questioning. Investors are promising us jobs, but which kind of jobs? So we also question the jobs. Is it decent work? Is it gainful employment? Are the workers pay as you earn? Because when we say we're advocating for a minimum wage, we are not saying we need a minimum wage as an end in itself. But we are saying even government can use the minimum wage if the threshold is within the taxable threshold where workers are able to pay as you earn. It means government will have more revenue. So these issues are connected in a way. And I'll allude to that later. But also at the East African Community level, there is the ESC, Model Investment Treaty. This is a progressive treaty, and it's supposed to guide ESC member states in their efforts and attempts to attract investments. But where is the problem? There is voluntary compliance. It's not mandatory. So we have quite a number of issues that we need to interrogate. And at Siatini, we've also been calling upon ESC, respective ESC member states, to promote the ESC region as a single investment destination. But there is the rest to the bottom. All the respective ESC partner states are attracting investors to the benefit of their individual countries. And we are saying that must stop. Because when we are talking about regional integration, we also have to be cognizant that investment issues are also supposed to be looked at. How are we attracting investors? In fact, earlier this year, one of our ministers recorded a video where the minister was promising investors that, we grant tax holidays. Upon expiry, we can extend. We have cheap labor. And on one time, on the Uganda Investment Authority website, there was a line that read, Uganda has the cheapest labor force in the ESC, in the East African Community. And actually, we mentioned that. And there's a time I checked and it was no longer there. So how are we attracting investors? Can we also explore other factors of attracting investors beyond land concessions, beyond tax holidays? Because even the political stability alone can be one of the factors. The arable land for land-based investments can be one of the factors. I mean, the good weather. There is so much that we can talk about beyond that. Why the need to review the Investment Code Act 2019? The previous speakers have already spoken to this. Before even going into the clause-by-clause analysis, because we don't want to delve into the clause-by-clause analysis without appreciating the general context. That 1991 law, investment law, was reviewed or amended to have the Investment Code Act 2019. And there were reasons behind that. Of course, to make Uganda Investment Authority as a one-stop center. Among others, we will delve into that. But also, a number of issues have emerged, and time has passed, where we have to make the investment policy framework fit for purpose. And with the passage of time, coupled with local, regional, and global geopolitical developments, I think there is need to make the investment code alive to all these developments. The geopolitical developments, there are negotiations for a legally binding treaty on business and human rights. All those are geopolitical developments. Among others, there is even the geopolitical tensions between the US, China, and EU countries, and they are racing to Africa. In fact, all eyes are on Africa. But how then can we safeguard ourselves from, all that spillover effects, negative spillover effects? You know, where strong parties fight, the weak ones suffer. And Africa is looked at as a source of raw materials. That has been since our colonial period. But we want to achieve structural transformation. And we cannot achieve it if the same is not embedded within the Investment Code Act and related laws. I spoke about the emerging issues, the policy shifts. Emerging issues, climate justice. There is increased appreciation of climate justice. And climate change is a reality. We cannot ignore that. In fact, communities are bearing the brunt of the climate crisis, and different categories of people are disproportionately affected. We can talk about women. We can talk about the persons with disabilities, the most marginalized, among other categories of people, including the youth. So all those issues, we have to make sure that the investment legal framework is alive to all these emerging issues. But also the European Union directives, for example, on corporate sustainability due diligence, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, European Union Deforestation Regulation. In fact, it's interesting that I'm building on the previous submissions, because Joseph already shared this articulately, that European Union Deforestation Regulation sits between investment and environment, and that's important to recognize. But all these regulations have come at a time, or were adopted at a time, when the Investment Code Act 2019 was already in place. And there is need to incorporate all the issues, the mandatory requirements and other emerging issues that have been brought to the fore by these EU directives. But also the issues of the energy transition. The Investment Code Act was put in place before momentum had been built around the energy transition, and especially in view of our realities, because our context is different. Whereas we recognize the energy transition is an imperative, but how then do we use our investment policies to achieve an inclusive and equitable energy transition, a just energy transition? We can only achieve the same when we have strong provisions on technology and skills transfer. That when investors are attracted, or when they come and invest here, when they are long gone, there is technology and skills transfer. There are issues of joint venture. How then do we make our investment code speak to other relevant policies and frameworks? Because energy transition touches different sectors, so there must be coherence, and I cannot overemphasize that. Issues of business and human rights. In fact, there is ESG, environmental, social, and social governance. All those issues are coming to the fore, that companies or businesses must have sustainable practices in their operations. They have to have policies that guide them on that journey to recognizing that the environment is important, and social rights are also important, among other issues. But also, it's important to review the Investment Code Act 2019 to enable foreign direct investment and also local investment to deliver on the promises. Like I earlier mentioned, investments have promises. It shouldn't be a red carpet. It shouldn't be business as usual. We must evaluate the investments, the investment-related activities, whether they have delivered on the promises. But we have to also have performance requirements. It's not just a red carpet like we're welcoming investors. But what are the performance requirements? When we attract an investor, when we grant them, for example, some incentives, incentives are also not bad per se. Because you can grant incentives in order to attract investments in a strategic sector where you need really that investment. However, the need to evaluate and monitor these investments, incentives, is also important. And of course, we are not only saying that the investment code is 100% flawed. There are some commendations that we also wish to make, that at least there are some actors that were brought on board. For example, the private sector. Although, in some of our concerns, we talk about the need to specify, categorize the private sector, because it's broad. When you talk about private sector actors, in which sectors? Who are those actors? Although it's a good thing. And then there's also the issue that gender is also sort of catered for on the board of UIA. But also we have other concerns, and I will speak to that when I get there. But I would like to first exhaust my explanation around this. And also it's important to provide certain safeguards to the affected parties to balance the investors' rights with state regulatory actions in the public interest. Already the discussion that we had previously, we recognized that investors have rights and obligations. And we're talking about a win-win situation where investors are winning, where the state is winning, and also the communities are winning. And the environment is not compromised. Because from where I come from, we have a notion that the environment is the womb of development. We cannot have any development without the environment. So that is very important. And as I continue to share more around why we need to review the Investment Code Act 2019, the need to balance the rights of citizens, state and investors, communities and the environment. I've already alluded to this. That's already self-explanatory. That in most cases, communities, host communities, only experience the negative spillover effects of these investments. In fact, even when you look at our industrialization model, when you look at the industrial parks, some communities don't even know what goes on in some industrial parks. There are no forward and backward linkages. And some industrial parks are assembling plants. They are white elephants in communities, protected, guarded, and the communities are not involved. And when they are involved, they have low-paying jobs. They are working under precarious working conditions, among other human and environmental rights concerns and violations. But also, there are limited powers by Uganda investment authorities to regulate investments. There is absence of a regulation object. And although the investment policy framework 1991 was reviewed to have the Investment Code Act 2019, still, beyond attracting investors, there is need for UIA, or for the Investment Code Act 2019, to have a strong provision on UIA monitoring these investments, regulating investments. And actually UIA being the coordinating agency to coordinate together with other relevant agencies and ministries like Ministry of Finance. But how things are now, in fact, Ministry of Finance has an upper hand than Uganda Investment Authority. Whereas UIA does the monitoring, but we need a regulatory role and an object in the Investment Code Act 2019. There is the issue of the gender lens perspective, which is missing. The Investment Code recognizes that investors have to employ, I think it's 60% of citizens. However, when we look at the gender aspects, in our position, we recommended that at least we should specify that 25% should be women. But also when you look at the board, although women are represented, there is the issue of the positions, that men take higher positions. So all those gender issues are at play. But also issues of the violations. Women are disproportionately affected, especially those that work in large scale or land-based or commercial investment schemes, that some women are sexually assaulted, and that's not a secret. And of course, even the housing and everything, the conditions, the working conditions of workers in those commercial investment schemes. I mean, a lot is desired. And we did some research. In fact, Faith, when we were still in that struggle together at Siatini, Faith led that process where we did some research around the Oil Palm Uganda Limited project, and the housing where men and women were all, staying in the same structure, which is truly, truly very, very bad. And the weak enforcement mechanisms in case investors fail to meet their obligations. In fact, in our review of the Investment Code Act 2019, we talked about the revocation of the investment license. There must be that provision whereby the investment license can be revoked. But that also has to be on strong grounds also when investors have violated their obligations. Of course, you also wouldn't want to strongly put it out there because it can also scare investors in a way. But it has to be clearly stated to provide some safeguards. Specific gaps that need to be addressed. The Investment Code Act 2019 does not have explicit provisions on local content. However, much local content is captured in other relevant laws. For example, the PPDA. Local content is clearly spelled out. I think it's 40% local procurement, among other laws around the petroleum oil extractives, petroleum sector extractives. Local content is clearly spelled out, and also the local content bill law. It's also clearly explicit on local content, but also explicit focus on attracting investment without taking into account its link with the broad national development aspirations, including human rights, gender, and environmental sustainability. We've been talking about the human rights impact assessment and environmental sustainability provisions to be embedded within the Investment Code Act 2019. And that cannot be overemphasized, because even where social impact, environmental and social impact assessments are conducted, sometimes they are flawed. But then it's only when we have strong provisions that we can achieve the desired objectives. The quest for structural transformation. That's very, very important. In fact, when we talk about issues like energy transition is connected to our quest for economic structure transformation, because we cannot allow the way we are integrated in the global value chain to remain the same. The West looks at us as suppliers of raw materials. And when we talk about investments, attracting investments, we have to change that sort of perspective, to change the way we are integrated. We are talking about structural transformation, industrialization, and those are critical components, because if we want to solve some of the multiple crises that we'll be falling with, for example, that we are facing, the issues of debt, the issues of the trade deficit, we have to talk about structural transformation. And it's only investment, the investment policy, and other related policies that can help us achieve that, all to change the way we are integrated in the global value chain. But also we've been talking about coffee, because discussions around coffee sector have gained momentum. We have been talking about industrialization, development of value chains, the coffee value chain among others, because we are looking at product-specific value chains. But we cannot achieve that if the investment policy framework is not fit for purpose. Governments, our government here in Uganda and other governments in the EAC also have signed various protocols and agreements. We've signed the African Continental Free Trade Area Protocol on investment that has labor provisions. The AfCFTA investment protocol has to be domesticated within our investment policy framework. But this came at a time when the Investment Code Act 2019 was already in place. So that's also one reason to call for the review of the Investment Code Act 2019. There's no provision on human rights impact assessment. I already alluded to this, that we need to have an explicit provision on human rights impact assessment. Thank you so much, and I welcome you to contribute to the discussion, but those are some of the substantive issues. It's not exhaustive, because we also have another clause-by-clause analysis that we did, which all of us contributed to. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. If you could run us the last slide. Yes, because this is the one that also addresses specific gaps.
Okay, so we have it again displayed?
No, yes, let's just leave it on.
Okay.
Because now we are going to get into the discussion.
All right.
So, Herbert has done us great, walking us through the different, the legal framework that is governing investments. He talks about the policies, he talks about the different acts in there. He talks about our relations with the agreements across the board. And then he gets us to the specific gaps that need to be addressed. Now, one, I commend you for being very attentive. Thank you so much. Now, let's get into this discussion. Let us do a rigorous split of what it is he has talked about, but also input what we feel is lacking or is missing in this discussion, so that then we can have a broader understanding of what we need to do as we propose the review of this act. So, I'm going to go by show hands. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Honorable is 5. But we'll start with honorable because so we'll go with the honorable and then we'll go this side.
Thank you. I think you made a very wonderful presentation. You earlier on, I think in the earlier slide, made a reference to a number of laws that I sense, I think, I can see a number of laws that are essential for attraction and promotion of investments in the country and also managing investments. But in the review, you have only focused on the investment code. So I don't know how the gaps in other laws can be addressed. 2, there are other frameworks within which the concerns you raise could be addressed. For example, there's the NEMA law, there are laws on climate change, which particularly require that when you are passing budget, you must be able to ensure all MDAs comply with climate change. So maybe an attempt should be made to have investors comply with this. I would like also to understand how that plays. Also, there is the issue of gender compliance, which you mentioned. Again, in the budget, before you pass a budget, it is a requirement in the Public Finance Management Act that the Equal Opportunities Commission should be able to issue a certificate of gender compliance. So would such a thing be replicated for investments? That is again something which you need to pay attention to. The Constitution is clear on a land acquisition by government, maybe for investments and issues of compensation. So I don't know how you would want things like that captured. but most importantly, there are treaties, of course, government signs, and they have implications for investments. And these multinationals can be very aggressive in treaty shopping to try to understand where the benefits are in terms of tax benefits and things like that. For example, we have signed treaties with the Mauritius, maybe Netherlands, and UK, and those treaties dictate what should be the tax rates applicable between the two countries, and that somehow sometimes disadvantages the people. And these treaties don't get laid on floor of Parliament for MPs to examine. So in summary, there are a number of other legislations. I think they are scattered across, and in attempting to review the investment code, it would be important to see how a reference can also be made to those laws, and consolidation can be done for ease of reference whenever you are dealing with the investments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable. Much of what he has are recommendations and also suggestions on what we can do.
Thank you so much, Excellent Talent, for the very good diagnosis of the Act. As earlier said, we need to reconcile the old Act with the new Act to ensure that there was no realignment of some of the sections, so that we are sure we are dealing with the Act as it is now. I wanted to, first of all, comment on what you talked about, the famous statement of "leave my investors," and I won't also name the person who is known for that statement, because it's notoriously known by all of us. Yes, that statement was, it gained life with the instituting of the all-powerful, I want to give it a name, the Nakayama Investor Protection Entity. Right now, I think where we envisaged that the UIA would be a one-stop center, I think all power now is with that State House Investment Investors Protection Unit. But the code never envisaged such a kind of germination of such a powerful entity. So how do we reconcile to ensure that, because you see it is operating with a mandate of protecting the investors, and because of that, any person who actually points out issues to do with investors, even as innocent as Siatini may want to put them across, you are likely to be misconstrued as someone who is fighting investors. Before I came here, I came in later as having a media engagement, but one of the questions that was put to me straight was that why are we, as environmental rights defenders, why are we fighting investors? That was put to me straight, and I had to take a lot of time to explain that we are actually not fighting investors, but for any case, we are even actually fighting for investors, but of course, calling for responsible investment. So the issue of the investor protection issue to be incorporated. But the other issue I also want to talk about is that the Uganda Investment Authority, recently I had a pleasure of being on the same panel with the ED, Uganda Investment Authority, Mr. Robert Mukiza. We had a panel discussion where we had an East Africa and Carbon Markets Forum, and he made some commitments that they are realigning their investment portfolio and priorities by creating what he called a green investment desk at the Uganda Investment Authority. And that is in tandem with, I'm happy that my brother Anthony is here, what the Ministry of Water and Environment is currently doing, the carbon trade regulation framework, to ensure that we have a viable and robust carbon markets framework which is working for Ugandans. I am informed that the regulation is already almost through, and that is in light of the National Climate Change Act. So how do we ensure, and I had an opportunity to be a part of one of the meetings, and I personally, as someone who is very critical about some of these issues, I had a lot of reservations, because you see that the framework is more or less like a colonial tool, which is aimed at attracting investors from somewhere to come and invest in Uganda, but without a very strong framework on how Ugandans can be protected. So how do we ensure that we tailor that to say that all green investments that are actually coming, that are really floodgating the country, are alive to the provisions of the Investment Code Act. Finally, since Ndugumwele has stood up, I wanted to speak to the issue of, first of all, pose a rhetorical question to us, and honorables really alluded to the same. Do these gaps in the Code Act, do they get addressed in other existing laws? Because we risk, impregnating the Code Act with a lot of, issues, because the hindsight of it was that it was just going to be an instrument to attract, because he made a very strong point that the UIA should be monitoring. I think that is asking too much from UIA. I don't think they actually can monitor. Their mandate is actually for them, they are aimed at attracting, marketing and, doing all sorts of things, attracting investment. But now the mandate of us making sure these investments are tailored on observing human rights enforcement, human rights-based approach, observing, climate change and environmental, safeguards. I think, as Honorable said, maybe we may have to look outside the Act and see whether actually these issues are addressed. For example, case in point, the National Climate Change Act provides for a requirement for a climate impact assessment that beyond what the National Environment Act provides for under Section 5, the principles of environmental governance and the providing for environmental impact assessment, there should be a climate impact assessment filed by every company, making sure they are held liable for every emission they actually occasion every year. So that is catered for under the National Climate Change Act. So we need to look at that and be able to see. And then, Honorable, you are a member of the National Economy Committee. I feel, do you really have the mandate to oversee this kind of work? Because I think that maybe time has come for us to advocate for a specific committee to midwife issues of trade and investment in this country. Because I see the committee that the Honorable sits on, without respect, Honorable, I don't see that you have the teeth to bite these big boys that we're actually grappling with. Some of us who are really confronting these guys. It's a big door. I think that if you're going to speak out, you're going to be cowed down and saying you're fighting the investors. I think we need a committee in place to actually talk about these issues in light of where we can table some of these issues to see that the Code Act can be realigned with the current and the future prospects to do with trade and investment in Uganda and in East Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, Robert, on that last bit, it's like the assumption is that members of parliament are not part and parcel of the investors. So, where do they bite themselves? But having said that, I think it also speaks to what I wanted to say, John, in light of what my brother talked about, Joseph, and what also came out clearly here, that when we are talking about reviewing the investment code, we are also talking about the increasing human rights violations that are ongoing in the different localities and the spaces where we work. So for me, the observation is where the elites, and including members of parliament and everybody, have conspired with the corporates to dispossess people of their land, of their rights, of their everything. And I wonder how the review process, or what we are doing, is going to enable that. And of course, there are different levels or different spaces where this conspiracy is taking place. In-house, it is taking place. At global level, Africa is missing. So where are we heading to? But then also I wanted to remind ourselves that Ministry of Gender, or generally the MDS, there is also a challenge. Now you look at one key issue which we have talked about, the environmental and social governance safeguards. And we look at NEMA, for example, who are expected to do or to oversee the environmental impact assessments. But then also we look at Ministry of Gender. They came up with a bill, Social Impact Assessment and Accountability Bill 2018. And I don't know where it is at the moment, because that was trying also to fill the gap that is there, that these investors, when they are coming to invest, they do these studies, and these studies are comprehensive. But right now what we see, it is just one component which is given maybe emphasis with all the limitations therein, but also the other bit of the social aspects are missing. Now, that bill is nowhere to be seen. Lastly, it is a question around the Uganda Law Reform Commission, what my brother here was talking about, what they did, I think like the harmonization and all that. Then I asked her, but where does that now leave us as we move into champion the review process of the investment code? Are we also in tandem or talking to what they did? Are we on time? Did the train leave us? And therefore we should catch up at the next station, or what does that mean for us? Thank you.
The analogy of the train is good in Uganda because we don't have one.
So for me, my submission would be respect to how do we ensure that the Code Act also captures aspects of continuous research and development, especially around the sources of investment that we have as a country. For instance, if we know that the country is blessed with natural resources, maybe in form of oil or gas or all these minerals, do we know that prospects? Do we know all the minerals that we have? And we're not going to know that unless we invest continuously in research and development.
The investors can only be monitored inside the house.
We are not aware of the resources that we have, but we have investors coming to discover these resources for us. And if you have people who are discovering things that you have in the backyards of your homes, then that is how we find
is to put the Pan-African agenda into the discussion we are having here.
Around stabilization clauses. And without a doubt, one of the challenges that we are having that affects our investments is that normally when our governments are getting into contracts with these investors, you find that there are these stability or stabilization clauses that are so long. You're giving a company a license to operate, let's say, for 50 or 30 years. And so you find that you're bound by that contract. So whatever developments come up along the way, you cannot go against your contract. So how do we ensure that we encourage our government to get into more flexible contracts and avoid some of the stability or stabilization clauses that we get to that continues to bind us and limit us from, harnessing whatever benefits that come from the resources that we have. And then the other would be that since the current a law that is under review, we are saying that we want to cure some of the, ensure that the code actually caters for some of these new developments. For instance, the concepts of climate justice, energy transition. Let's kindly ensure that we make very close reference to the different frameworks that we have, because ever since we, the conversation around energy transition, climate justice took shape, we have seen so many legal and policy frameworks being put into place. We saw the energy transition plan launched at COP28 last year in Dubai. A month before that, that was in October, we also saw the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development pass the energy transition policy. So how do we ensure that as we review this law, we are making reference to this to ensure that, again, the aspect of incoherence in the different legal and policy frameworks is addressed. And the Uganda's NDCs were also reviewed in 2022. So let's also make reference to that. In 2022, we also had the Mining and Minerals Act being passed into law. So let's make close reference to that so that we have coherence or consistency in all our legal and policy frameworks. And then also to ensure that, yes? Just seconds. The aspect of public-private partnerships. How do we ensure that the Code Act is capturing that to ensure that both the state and private sector is able to tap into the available financing opportunities that are available with some of these multilateral companies? Because I know that if you, for instance, the World Bank, if you want to tap into the resources, if it was just a private sector entity and maybe just government, it would be more difficult compared to if it was a public-private partnership. But also when you have that PPP, then it's easier for you to assure your financer that your project or investment is bankable. And then the last one is around the human rights impact assessment that you have spelled out that this provision, this law, should cater for. I would say that yes, it is a very good one, but how do we ensure that we have human rights impact assessment reports, maybe one from the investor and then another one from civil society that gives an alternative opinion. Just like what happens with the Universal Periodic Review process, you normally have the state report and then there's the shadow report, because the reality is that normally investors will tend to give a very beautiful and flowery picture of everything, all the different environmental and social management frameworks that they have put in place. They will say they are adhering to this, they have got everything right and they are ready to execute the project. So how do we ensure that we have an alternative report that gives a true reality of what is on ground? I can give an example in that regard. For the ECOP, in 2019, Global Rights Alert came up with a human rights impact assessment for that was identifying the actual and potential human rights implications of the ECOP. And then after that was, I think, the first human rights impact assessment report that I saw being developed. And after that, last year we saw Total also develop a human rights impact assessment for the Tilenga project. But when you look at that human rights impact assessment report that was developed by Total, the impression that all is well, we have catered and factored in all the different human rights issues that could come up as a result of this project. We have different management plans in place to address all these violations that could potentially come up. So I am thinking, as we look at the HRIA, could we maybe have two?
Thank you so much. And lastly,
thank you so much. I think the discussion is around looking at how the investments, the numerous ESG investment codes speak to this. You see, they have one thing in common. They are looking at attracting investment and creating more jobs. Because at the end of the day, what will you make as an answer from the president? You'll be like, I have to create jobs for my people and also maybe add some taxes here and there to increase our resource envelope. But the regional approach cannot be overemphasized, because I think the issue of voluntary compliance to the ESG Model Investment Treaty, I think it's one of those issues that is failing us. Because, as we know, all members of the ESG states are fighting for investment because they want to create jobs at this time. However, they do not care whether these jobs are decent or not. Why? Because they have to impress the people. The moment an investment agreement is signed with a corporation, with all these promises and all these back and forth incentives that are offered to the corporations, the authorities that are mandated to regulate sit back and do not take into consideration the monitoring. And that is why it is important for us to strengthen our advocacy efforts at ensuring that the ESC Model Investment Treaty works for the people and promoting fair investments in the ESC region. But also looking at a framework on monitoring the progress and also how investments measure up to the promises that they make. It is important to have that framework, and it should be a comprehensive framework looking at issues of human rights, environmental rights, but also the corporate human rights due diligence. But I've also noticed that the fact that we are looking at foreign direct investment, I think FDI has become synonymous with IFFs. And that is one of the things we should ideally look at. The investment code does not promote local investors so much, but it looks at attracting FDI mainly, of which FDI it comes with its disadvantages, and I think IFFs are one of those disadvantages. So I think we need research to see the linkage between FDI and illicit financial flows. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm Faith Lumonia again from Akina Mama Africa. I just wanted to add a few thoughts to the conversation. One is to reflect on the issue of integrating human rights, integrating gender, and I think I am privileged to sit in certain climate finance conversations at the global level. Because the climate finance architecture has now been broken to, as always, includes private sector beyond public financials or public sector. One of the conversations that we recently had was how do we ensure gender responsive climate finance? And one of the things that the private sector have put on table is that they want an enabling environment to be able to deliver gender responsive climate finance. And the same applies to the issue of human rights. So for them, the way they are approaching this thing is that it's an additional responsibility. And so for them to deliver on it, they need an enabling environment, and they need certain incentives to be put in place. And because there is no global investment policy framework or global space to discuss the way investment is handled, I think for me the climate finance conversation provides a picture of what the perspective of particularly foreign investors is when they come into our countries. Because they come to do business. And so for them to be gender responsive, for them to protect human rights, they want an incentive. They want an enabling environment. And so I think that's why it's important that we stop looking at it as a request we are making to them, but make it an obligation. And that obligation should even come with penalties. And so I think that the call to integrate some of these things in our investment policy frameworks can't be overemphasized. So I just wanted to give that perspective so that then we can have an appreciation of the minds of these people that we are dealing with. The other thing I was reflecting on is when we talk about investors, I think it's important to recognize that they are investors. The state is an investor, the state in itself, but then also us as citizens, domestic, we are also investors. But then also there's investors who are foreign, but they are state. So like how the Chinese operate with us. And then there are also foreign but private. And there's a power dynamic that is at play, particularly when we are dealing with foreign and state. And I think that that's one thing that the investment code needs to take into consideration. Because also, why extend an incentive to a state, to a foreign state-owned investor? Why? Why would you do that? And I think those are some of the things that need to be looked into when we begin to think about reviewing the investment code. Lastly, I wanted to talk about bilateral investment treaties. They've already been mentioned, but I think it's important for us to have an investment code that provides clarity in terms of what bilateral investment treaties we should have in place, because majority of those that we currently have are post-colonial. Some of them are actually pre-independence. They are
Smart 24, driving business.
You used to tell me that I don't make you happy. All that time you would be complaining. I'll call you every day, yeah, yo, baby, don't know.
You can now get all the Chibuzi out with MTN voice bundles. Call all networks Kubei Dondoro. Buy a 25-minute voice bundle for only 1,000, or buy any daily voice bundle of your choice. Dial *100 *21# and select daily, or use the My MTN app. When we talk together, we are unstoppable.
Cooking oil like no other makes your meal so sweet and scrumptious. The taste of Uganda, yeah, the taste of Uganda, the taste.
When it comes to unboxing the biggest and best shows on the planet, we've got plenty. Go ahead. Yep, we've got loads of this, buckets of that, and bags of those.
Ooh.
There's smart stuff and fun stuff. The best under the sun stuff. Far places and spaces. Car races and chases.
Paw Patrol is on a roll.
Yes, we've got heaps of absolutely everything ready and waiting for you to unbox. Only on DSTV.
Are you a woman entrepreneur or a woman owning a business and looking for affordable financing to scale up your business? Look no further than the Grow Loan. Grow Loan targets female entrepreneurs nationwide. Key features include a minimum loan amount of 4 million and a maximum loan amount of 200 million shillings, a maximum interest rate not exceeding 10.5% per annum, a loan repayment period not exceeding 24 months. All Grow Loan borrowers must comply with the Grow Project environmental and social standards. Special incentives are available for borrowers that are refugees or from the refugee host communities, people living with disabilities, and women entrepreneurs from the underserved or minority groups. To apply, contact any of the 6 participating financial institutions. Contact us for more information or visit our website at www.grow.go.ug. The GROW loan is an intervention under the GROW project, a Government of Uganda project financed by the World Bank and implemented by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development and the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. GROW, generating growth opportunities and productivity for women enterprises.
Hello tech lovers, the Pixel tablet is here. Is Google back? Wow, we could all be asking the same question, but the Pixel tablet launches today into a field more crowded than ever, priced at £599. It's got the same chip as the company's flagship Pixel 7 smartphones, an 11-inch screen and a bunch of applications optimized to take advantage. But the standout feature is the dock, which you slap the tablet onto with some powerful magnets and effectively transforms the device into a home hub. You can see information like time and weather, have it cycle through photos, play music from the inbuilt speakers, control your lights, and its Hey Google voice assistant is always listening. Given that ever more muddled space between smartphones and tablets, Google will hope its decision to have it flat with the smart home market proves a masterstroke. Considering its history with new products, we will all know in about 2 years. Google has a history of killing off products that don't set the world alight. From its Stadia gaming platform to its previous Pixel tablet, it hopes its latest effort will find itself an audience by stuttering the line between the tablet and the home hub. As smartphone screens have gotten bigger and laptops more powerful, tablets have gone through something of an identity crisis. Once pitched as an obvious middle ground between the computer in your pocket and one on your lap, the thinking behind them seems increasingly muddled. There are iPads for people who want a keyboard and powerful processor, and those who want a small screen. Samsung, unfortunately, occasionally with a stylus, makes tablets while also making phones that fold out into screens even bigger than some tablets. And don't forget Amazon's various Kindles and Microsoft's array of Surfaces. If your head is hurting because of all these features, then you're definitely not alone. As someone who recently helped research a newly family tablet purchase, it's more difficult than ever to know which models to choose from as your use cases vary so wildly. But that hasn't stopped Google from developing the latest Google Pixel tablet, which comes with a twist. But can it find an audience?
Smart 24, driving business.
The Kenyan government is seeking a framework that would allow Uganda to begin producing food in a planned manner for a market that is assured in Kenya in order to reduce Kenya's food insecurity and increase income for Ugandan farmers. Latest data shows a likely unprecedented deterioration in Kenya's food security situation, with over 5.4 million people expressing acute food insecurity between March and June this year, and likely to deepen in the following months.
So what we are looking at is in terms of
if Uganda has got excess capacity, and as a neighbor, can it support Kenya in terms of food in a structured manner, and not in the manner where traders come, they buy maize from Uganda, excess maize, they go to Kenya. It is not a structured manner. Secondly, in that also the government of Kenya cannot plan, cannot actually know how much food is going to get from Uganda. So we want a situation where we are sure that we are going to grow together a certain amount of maize, for example. We know that if it is grown between January and end of harvesting, end of April, the government of Kenya can know that we are going to get 1 million bags of maize from Uganda and plan for that. So that is why I wanted to, after having a lot of discussions with all the other stakeholders, we wanted now to go out to the field and have a feel of really what is happening and see what structures are there, see what is available, so that as we go back we can sit down and now come up with a plan and sell this plan to our governments and see how we can support each other.
Urgent action is therefore required to reduce food gaps, protect livelihoods, and treat acute malnutrition. A delegation of private sector players, accompanied by the Kenyan High Commissioner to Uganda, His Excellency General George Aggrey Owino, therefore made a field tour of the districts of Kiryandongo, Lira, Dokolo, Lamu, and Amuria, aiming at assessing the gains so far made and the challenges faced by smallholder farmers and processors. The visit was sponsored by TAD Capital and Investment, an entity that offers financial support to agro-enterprises. The team, which included representatives from Uganda Breweries, NCBA Bank, Finca, Emlet Insurance, and the American Chamber of Commerce, also held a face-to-face engagements with the respective districts and civic leaders, as well as the communities and farmers groups, in order to appreciate the pertinent issues and what more must be done to make northern Uganda the food basket for the Great Lakes region. The main objective of the field visit was to highlight and assess the progress so far made in regard to boosting food security through smallholder agricultural production. According to a 2014 report by the World Bank, Uganda has 6.9 million hectares of land, which represents 34.1% of the country's total land area. Regardless of this estimate, the country considers 71.9% of its land area to be agricultural land. Additionally, about 11% of the total land area is under permanent crops, while forest cover 14%. Only 35% of the Uganda's agricultural land is being utilized and is often characterized by poor farming methods and tools. Much as there's a fertile land in Uganda, farmers in northern Uganda highlighted a number of challenges like lack of affordable access to capital, rudimentary farming, lack of agricultural insurance, poor market for their products. TAD Capital and Investment Limited, which was part of the delegation, believes access to finance by farmers is one of the biggest problems which can be handled.
Doesn't have money to buy the produce, the quantity that the off-takers want. So because we discussed with our partner banks, said Shamba Bora needs, say, 500 million, but it doesn't have a land title to pledge as collateral. So what we do, we tell the bank, our partner banks, give that money, we shall manage the stock until you get paid back.
Since we have the land, since we have the manpower, our community need to be supported. We need a soft loan whereby the community can borrow so that they can access the modern equipment. Because when you go to the community right now, And when you find them farming, they're still using the rudimentary tools. The horse, this djembe here. And the most modernized equipment for now is the oxflow, whereby they tie two bulls, then they move with one is sensing from here. And when you move around in the community, when you find bulls with a lot of wounds on the back, meaning those are the bulls they use for oxflow. So we told them, please provide for us equipment, put for us service center.
Reports indicate that Kenya is in a dire need of beans, coffee, sorghum, maize, rice and cassava, among others. Kenyan farmers were met with their counterparts in Uganda for better trade. Investors like Shamba Bora, based in Kiriandongo, and Tour Uganda in Lira, considers Uganda's agricultural potential to be among the best in Africa, but are being constrained by lack of power and poor roads to transport their produce, as well as limited market.
It took us 2 weeks because of, again, as you know, right now there's a lot of interruption of power. Even right now we've received that we are going to miss power every alternative day from today until 10 September. There's no power. So those are some of the challenges we are going through. So it depends. It's all about power. Everything else is set up.
Now, from then on, challenges were access to finance. You could see the road network is so poor. There's no way you could take off produce, and then there's no way you could easily access the farm. There are days when you'd come and it's rained so heavily, you see that bridge under construction, it would burst. Then there's no other way of accessing the farm. So you have to go back. So for about a month, I was commuting from Gulu to Amuru, until they set up the accommodation structures.
Before Shamba Bora, we had the challenge of market, whereby farmers would sell maize at least even at 500, but right now, at least we are sure at least we can begin at 1,000 going up. And at least if a farmer follows the gap, at least in an acre you can get around 2 to 3 tons. And but otherwise, the other time, you would at least get, so a farmer who has worked well and at least would get around 800 kilograms, which was too low for production for a farmer to get something there to sustain him.
According to the report by the International Trade Administration to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, commercialization of the sector is impeded by farmers' limited use of fertilizers and quality seeds and a lack of irrigation infrastructure, rendering production vulnerable to climate extremes. In March 2021, the Kenyan government banned Uganda's maize exports after the Agriculture and Food Authority in Kenya said that the maize contained aflatoxins which can cause cancer. In the same month, Kenya also banned maize imports from Tanzania after discovering the presence of smaller contamination. Taking his take, the ambassador noted that all these problems can end through working together.
Shamba Bora will be responsible for production of maize to the standards required. That means they'll start with the farmer from the time the farmer is growing, tell the farmer the correct fertilizer, actually give the farmer the correct fertilizer, take the farmer all that journey until harvesting. Then do post-harvesting activities, storage. Yeah, the gentleman there said they also take care of storage, this transportation. So you don't leave it to the farmer individually, because the farmer does not know to what extent should you dry your maize, what percentage is acceptable. So in that chain also you have a dryer. Yeah? With experts, their job is drying. Then you'll have storage, whose experts are dealing with the aflatoxin issues.
I would want to encourage you to continue like that and remain in touch with us.
Kenya, like any other African countries, faces a number of challenges when it comes to food. Despite being an agricultural country with a significant proportion of its population engaged in farming, Kenya still struggles to feed its people adequately. with the Council's action to address these challenges and ensure that all Kenyans have access to nutritious and affordable food.
Then it's rolled to the dryer, and then
to address these challenges, therefore, the Kenya's ambassador to Uganda, His Excellency George Aggrey Owino, hopes to have the two governments on a round-table discussion to prioritize food security and investing in the agricultural sector. This should include supporting small-scale farmers through training, access to credit, and improved infrastructure, and limiting trade barriers.
One of the pillars of integration is integrating our economies. That means that we'll be having a common currency, we'll be having a common economy. That is the direction we want to go. Now, that is the direction that we want to go, in that it will eliminate what we call non-tariff barriers in trade. There are certain barriers in trade that should not be there, should be removed. If I'm exporting milk from Uganda to Kenya, why should Kenyans charge tax on that and you give me the milk? I normally say, I ask Kenyans, somebody is bringing you food, you don't have food. And somebody at the border says you pay tax for this food, and you don't have the food. It doesn't make sense. So I think the governments have been working together to deal with those. In fact, as of last week, at the East Africa community level, there was a technical meeting that was looking at these trade barriers. And there were 10 trade barriers that were identified, and 6 of them were resolved country to country. In the coming month, there's an EAC meeting again that will go at the ministerial level now. What was not resolved at the technical level will be resolved at the ministerial level. And at the ministerial level, they cannot resolve. It will go to the principal now, the heads of state, to resolve and say, okay, this is what we have agreed on in terms of import and export of commodities across the countries. So that is there's a structure that deals with that. And unfortunately, it has not been completed. But once in a while, you hear this problem, somebody at the border point does not understand some of those things and inconveniences. But there's a structure now for all the governments of the EAC to deal with those trade barriers.
That under the framework of East African community, we are able to carry out production with well-synchronized market within the EAC. So for the ambassador of Kenya, the High Commissioner of Kenya, to come to Dokolo, to northern Uganda, and assure us of what we already knew, that Kenya is a good market for us, but the ambassador to come is very humbling. He has made a clear statement that the market is there. So what we have to respect, which we have to do, to produce quality items to satisfy this market.
The governments also need to promote sustainable agricultural practices that reduce the impact of climate change and increase productivity. This could include the use of drought-resistant crops, irrigation system, and agroforestry techniques. Food security is a complex issue that requires a comprehensive and coordinated response from both Kenya and Ugandan governments, civil society organizations, and international partners with the right policies and investment. Africa can therefore overcome its food security challenges and ensure that all its citizens have access to nutritious and affordable food. Petson Mumbere for Smart 24 TV.
Wenyukanga ekizungirizi ate kamera ya yolumamyo banange ebyandaka ku buggo guno mugano gwennyini funa kabodi supakati ku nsimbi ezisaliddwako ng'otandika kusinyisa 29 zokka osasule polampa.